It's an old story. A young girl finds herself pregnant. But it comes as no surprise. It had been the plan all along. She had been forced into bed with a much older man. And it was actually the old man's wife who arranged this dubious encounter. This sort of thing isn't so unusual in polygamist cultures like this one. After all, it is the wife's responsibility to bear children for her husband. And the older wife was past her childbearing years and had never been able to conceive. So she reluctantly did what had to be done. She got her husband another wife, one who would give him what she never could. At first, they rejoice at the girl's pregnancy. Finally, there would be children in the home. But the rejoicing doesn't last long. When the pretty young girl's pregnancy begins to show, the older woman grows bitter and finds herself consumed with jealousy. She begins to take it out on the poor girl, victimizing her yet again. Finally, a day comes when some fit of rage is the last straw, and the young girl decides it would be better to take her chances out in the unforgiving world rather than languish in her abusive prison. So she escapes. Sadly, things go from bad to worse for this poor girl. She has no means of survival in the harsh reality of the outside world. Hopeless, alone, and destitute, she sits down and hopes that death comes quickly. You may recognize this as the sad account of Abraham, of Sarah, and the maidservant Hagar. You can read all about it in Genesis chapter 16. But this story repeats itself over and over today in thousands of polygamous homes right here in North America. Women who know only oppression, who are unwitting pawns in other people's schemes. Women who have never known a God of love, a God of compassion, a God who is near. They have known only abuse, abandonment, and hopelessness. The young Hagar had a different experience. As she wept in despair, God saw her. He came to her, met her needs, and strengthened her to face her difficult circumstances. In wonder and gratitude, she said to him, "You are the God who sees me." But what about the plight of the thousands of women who are living Hagar's nightmare right now, right here in our own nation? Does God not also see them? Will He not also come to their rescue?
I prayed every day, "Dear God, help me get out."
I just pleaded with God. I wanted to die. I didn't want to do this.
Every day I would wake up just feeling like I don't want to do this.
We were always afraid.
There's a lot of fear growing up in polygamy.
You just want safety.
I wanted to run, I wanted to leave, and felt like I couldn't. I was now trapped.
Either you choose to live polygamy or you're going to go to hell.
I hated my life, and I would wish somebody would come and kidnap me and take me away.
I had no idea what polygamy was actually going to be like.
Even if leaving means going to hell, I'm already there.
All these men did whatever they wanted to all these women in my life, and sometimes me.
I was given as a third wife to a man that I'd hated since I was 9.
And I couldn't do what I would think about it.
I was born here, in the land of the free, a slave in a polygamous cult, and my story is not unique.
I was born and raised in a polygamy group here in Utah, and as I tell my story, you will realize that neither God's love nor His grace are modeled in polygamy cultures.
I was the 6th out of 7 wives to my husband. The night of my wedding was the saddest day of my life. I felt like I was betrayed by my parents. Here I was going to marry this man I just barely knew. And as I prepared that night and got in the car with my parents and had said goodbye to my siblings, and we were driving over for the wedding ceremony, this horrible storm began to brew. And the skies got so dark. Limbs were snapping off trees, and I wanted some big tree to fall right down on our car and just kill me. I didn't want to do this. I just pleaded with God. I wanted to die. I didn't want to do this. And He didn't kill me. And the tree didn't fall on the car. And we made it there. And now I was really stuck.
Tragically, too many heartbreaking stories are never made public, and they remain untold. It's not just a few dozen, and it's not even a few hundred. We are talking about tens of thousands of lives held captive by this cruel system of religious polygamy. It can be truthfully called an epidemic, and it is a living nightmare for those who want to get out and can't.
The birth of Mormon fundamentalism dates back to the early part of the 20th century, when the mainstream Mormon Church gave up the practice of polygamy. This created a dilemma for many Mormons because Joseph Smith, the founder of the Mormon Church, taught that polygamy was a necessary work, required by God to earn eternal life. Mormon fundamentalists, then, are those who follow the original teachings of early Mormonism, including polygamy. Today, the Mormon fundamentalist population in North America is estimated at anywhere between 30,000 and 100,000. Their secrecy makes more precise figures hard to come by. The main concentration of Mormon fundamentalist polygamy is located within the so-called Mormon Corridor, of which Utah is the center, but it stretches into the neighboring states of Idaho, Arizona, Nevada, Wyoming, Colorado, and New Mexico. There are also polygamist communities and enclaves scattered throughout the West, in Washington, Oregon, California, Texas, Montana, South Dakota, and Missouri, and even further east. It has also spread north into Canada and south into Mexico.
There is polygamy in probably every state in the nation today. There's little groups of it all over the place. Some of them consider themselves as churches. Some are independent polygamists. But polygamy is alive and well throughout our country.
Mormon polygamy is extremely prevalent in this country. America doesn't know what's going on in its own backyard.
In recent years, polygamy has gained more visibility in the press and on certain reality TV shows. But what is shown is a whitewashed, sanitized version of polygamy. It's often presented as a perfectly acceptable lifestyle choice willfully entered into by free-thinking, consenting adults. And so you end up seeing on TV women who put on their plastic smiles and tell you how wonderful polygamy is. But they don't tell you the real story.
I see them on TV with their little bright, shiny, smiley faces saying how happy they were, and I go, yeah, denial's your drug of choice too. Because I lived that, I know.
They tell you that they chose to live polygamy.
But they don't talk about the doctrine and what's behind it all, what the concept is, why they would ever choose to live polygamy in the first place.
They have to choose to live polygamy. We were taught from the time that we were born that if we did not live polygamy, we would suffer eternal damnation.
Well, I believed before that we absolutely had to live it. You had to live it to go to heaven, to please God.
I, like other polygamous children, did not have a choice in marriage. I was told I had a choice. I even believed I had a choice because I was told I had my free agency. I had my free agency to do what I was told or suffer the consequences. That's not a choice.
You're not given a choice. Either you choose to live polygamy, or you know that you're going to go to hell, because that's part of the doctrine.
What kind of choice do you really have when you're threatened with hell and damnation? Your choice is do it or else. When I finally escaped, I was consciously choosing hell. That's why few people actually leave. Their salvation depends upon their submission without complaint. And this is exactly how women and young girls are forced into the sexual slavery that polygamy is.
I was afraid of males in particular. Men viewed women as possessions, that they could do anything they wanted to. The males that came into the home were very oppressive. They did whatever they wanted to the children and the women in the home.
Polygamy, by its very nature, forces young girls into marriage because the supply of women gets depleted quickly, and so the men look to younger girls to become their plural wives. They are treated and considered as commodities, and for obvious reasons, they must keep it all highly secretive.
When I was a kid, they were telling everybody, we will never have child brides. We are the better ones. We're the good polygamists. Don't paint us with the same brush. Guess what? There's always been child brides. And there has always been lying to the government and the press that there's going to be no child brides.
Most of the girls in the polygamist group I was in got married when they were quite young. Some of them were 14, 15.
I was 14 years old when our prophet, Joe LeBaron's younger brother, Verlin, started to court me. And I married him when I was just past my 15th birthday. I became his 6th wife. He was 38.
People ask, so what is the law doing to protect against this sort of thing? Well, it's complicated. There's a double-mindedness about polygamy, especially here in Utah. On one hand, it's part of their proud pioneer heritage. And on the other hand, polygamy is embarrassing and they want to direct attention away from it. So the mainstream church and culture turns a blind eye to the modern polygamous groups, and in so doing, they turn a blind eye to the abuses. Sadly, this attitude trickles down to legal policy and law enforcement, resulting in a lack of proper protection that the law should provide against human rights violations in polygamy. It is woefully and shamefully inadequate. But it goes deeper than cultural heritage. In this brainwashed polygamy culture, many of the victims don't even realize they're victims. For them, there is no concept of human rights to violate. And so it doesn't even occur to them to testify against their abusers. And even for those who know they're being mistreated, fear of retribution keeps most of them silent about all these secrets.
These people will not testify against each other or against the men who keep them in bondage because their salvation is at stake.
Probably more than anything is the fear of what will happen to them if they do leave. It's been drilled into them all their lives that the outside world is wicked and evil and that God will send them straight to hell if they leave their polygamy group. These fears are paralyzing and they run deep and they keep them bound to their abusers.
If the public was educated about what really goes on in polygamy, they would realize that these women are literally in bondage. They're in bondage to their bloodthirsty and terrifying God that will destroy them if they don't submit.
The God I knew was a lightning bolt that would strike me dead if I did the wrong thing. I was afraid of him. He had all the power, and I had none. He had all the say-so, and I had none. It was not a God I wanted to be near. It was not a God that really loved and cared about me.
I felt like I didn't understand God at all. And in reality, I didn't care that I didn't understand him. I didn't like what I knew about God. God, in my mind, was a polygamist who had many wives in heaven.
God hated me because I was a sinner. God hated me because I failed. God hated me because I questioned polygamy, and I would ask questions. And so as I grew older, my father took on more of an authoritative, punishing role, beating up on me. He was going to make sure I got into heaven. He had to kick me all the way there. And I remember thinking, I don't want to go there. If that's the way it works, I don't even want to be there. If staying in the group meant this kind of pain and this kind of God hating me, I can't please him, I can't please my mom, I can't please the group, I can't please anybody, might as well get out of here. If leaving means going to hell, I'm already there.
I wanted to run, I wanted to leave. And by the time I really got the courage to leave, I found out I was pregnant and felt like I couldn't. I was now trapped. And the bondage of my motherhood was now going to keep me there.
I had these fantasies about being on my own, about finding a husband to love me and to be there for me. But I never thought that it would become a reality. I felt like I had these evil, secret ideas of wanting a husband of my own. And I couldn't share that with anyone because then they'd know how evil I was.
And I began to really hate my life. I hated home, I hated my parents. I hated the lifestyle, and I would dream, I would even daydream walking home from school, and I would wish somebody would come and kidnap me and take me away. I didn't want to be there, and that was my wish all while I was growing up, that somebody would take, no, they never did. So when I got old enough, I ran. I made the decision about the time I was 16 that I was going to flee. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I did realize that I needed to wait until I was 18 years older. They would come and get me and take me back if I wasn't of legal age, and I know they would have. So I waited until I was 18, and then I made arrangements with someone, and she helped me get out of the group and run away and hide.
I knew that I would leave. The opportunity presented itself to me all of a sudden. My dad was planning to leave to go visit Utah. And the thought just suddenly hit me. Oh my goodness, I can go with my dad. And of course, I didn't know whether my older brothers and sisters who lived in Utah would be willing to let me come with 5 little kids and stay with them. But I was so desperate at this point. I had to have somewhere to go, and I felt like it was worth the risk. And so I convinced my dad to let the kids and me ride with him up to Utah, and just on a little vacation. And so I packed up my suitcases, and I was shaking, absolutely terrified. I didn't know what was going to happen.
I went to my mother and I begged her to help me escape. And she said, "You're underage. If you run away, the police will bring you back. And when they bring you back to us, we'll have to give you back to your husband because you belong to him now." And she was so afraid of what they might do to me if I escaped and they got me, that she herself turned me in. And my husband took my little baby. My baby was just a few months old. I was breastfeeding her. And I physically tried to fight him to get my baby, and he told me, "If this baby gets hurt, remember, it's your fault." So I quit fighting him. And he said, "You know, I'm going to remind you what your mother said was true. If you run away, if you leave, the police will bring you back. And it will be worse than you could ever imagine." He took my baby and he gave her to an insane wife of his father-in-law. And it was weeks before I got her back. And those were the worst weeks of my life. And when I got her back, I was so terrified and traumatized that I was afraid to do anything. So I stuck around for 5 more little girls, all little girls. And with each one that was born, I hated myself because I brought another child into slavery. And I would hold my baby and cry and tell her, "What kind of a mommy have you got? You will be a slave all your life, just like me, and I brought you into this world." And with that, I prayed every day, "Dear God, help me get out, but help me get out with my children."
I had agreed to get married. I had it all planned. I had it all, a date set and everything ready to go. I was 17, and I don't know how old he was. He was probably 50, maybe. Maybe he was a little younger, maybe he was 40. I was going to be a third wife. So, but the closer it got, I just kept, every day I would wake up just feeling like I don't want to do this.
I entered into the polygamous lifestyle because my pregnant mother made a promise to my father, who was on his deathbed, that she would bring us children up in their belief, and that was their belief. You have to obey the brethren and submit yourself to be placed in marriage wherever they say that God wants you to go. I was given as a third wife to a man that I'd hated since I was 9, and it was absolutely horrifying, but I submitted to it.
A lot of people look at this situation and say, "Why don't they just leave?" The bottom line is survival. Where is a woman going to go when she has a large family, no education, and no support system?
These poor people have been born in this. They have been brainwashed from birth. You know, they are in such an unfortunate situation that they can't find themselves out of.
And just like it was for me then, today most women in polygamy groups don't see any options available to them either. They see no way out. They are trapped. Even if they wanted to flee, where would they go? When these women leave, they often leave with nothing, not only in terms of possessions, but also in terms of their ability to survive in the outside world. They're not equipped to live on their own, especially women with children.
I came out of polygamy as a 23, almost 24-year-old with 5 little children, a couple of suitcases with a few clothes in it, and absolutely nothing else. I had no high school education. I was very naive about how the world ran.
It's not unusual for some of them to have no birth certificates. Others have never opened a personal bank account or balanced a checkbook or even knows what that means. Many escapees have only had 3rd or 4th grade education. It's kind of a culture shock for most who do leave. Imagine stepping off a boat from a distant country where you don't even know how the most basic parts of that society works.
If it hadn't have been for the fact that I had older siblings that would take care of us, I would still be involved in that polygamous community today. I don't think I would have ever left. I would have had nowhere to go.
They come to you in fear. They come to you in emptiness, no self-confidence, no ability to support themselves, no correct education, and no correct information about the world they're getting ready to face.
I wasn't ready for the outside world. I had no idea that the world would chew me up and spit me out, and it did. And I had no protection, and I had no one to turn to. And the challenge before us is to have a safe place for refugees to go, and to get the word out that there is a safe place they can run to and be protected from their pursuers.
I think there would be a lot of people who left polygamy if they knew that not only was there a place to go, but a plan to rehabilitate them for the future. I would have left a good 3-4 years before I did, if I would have known that there was somewhere to go.
The needs of women fleeing polygamy are overwhelming. There are so few resources to meet their needs. Of course, they have immediate needs like anyone, food and clothing and shelter and safety. But if these women will ever be able to thrive in the outside world, they will need counseling, education, work skills, and life skills training, mentorship. Many will need legal help to keep their children from being returned back to their polygamous fathers or other abusers. But more than anything, they need to hear that God loves and cares for them. He will not terrorize them. And He doesn't hate them for leaving polygamy. He promises to walk with them along the way. And to know the truth about God is absolutely essential for complete healing. And that is our desire for them.
They need somewhere to go where they know that they're going to be safe, where they know that their children are going to be fed, that they're going to have a roof over their heads. And then they need to learn who God really is, because that's what's going to sustain them.
And if there was that place, then yes, they would easily go. Very easily.
You can't even imagine how different my life would have been if that had existed for me.
I think if they knew that there was someone that would say, hey, come on, let's get you on your feet, whatever we can do to help you, yeah.
It would be so much easier for people to leave if they knew they had help.
Without help, a lot of them will stay and they'll be lost.
I can't say that I ever regretted leaving. It was a horrible life. I didn't know that it wasn't God's will. I thought I was running from my only chance for salvation. I thought I was running and leaving that. But God isn't hateful. I didn't know that. I wish I'd known that. I wish I'd known when I was growing up that God loved me. Learning of God's love was the most important thing that happened in my life.
I have so many beautiful people that I love that are locked up in chains. I love them with every fiber of my being, my precious Carol and Edna and Anne-Marie, and I just want them to know that I pray for them every single day, that the day will come, that they will be willing to look at the truth.
A Shield and Refuge ministry draws its mission from Isaiah 61, to bring good news to the afflicted, to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim liberty to the captives and freedom to the prisoners, and to declare the Lord's favor to those who have only heard of His anger and rejection. Our vision is to establish a secure safe house facility with a competent and caring staff who are dedicated to walking alongside those who are escaping polygamy, including those escaping with children, and to provide for both their immediate and their long-term needs. A large, well-staffed safe house facility will be able to house several polygamous families at the same time in their own living areas, in a safe and secure location, allowing them to rest, to heal, to learn, to grow, and eventually launch them into an independent and abundant life outside of polygamy. We are calling this safe house the Hagar Home, in honor of a young, helpless girl who fled polygamy thousands of years ago, and in recognition of the great God who saw her and cared for her and still sees and cares for polygamous refugees today. Then they too will be able to heal and grow strong and move forward in life with hope and confidence. But we know that God has not called us to undertake this task alone. We need help. We have a long way to go, and this is a huge undertaking. But don't we have a huge God? And He's putting together a team to make this much-needed facility a reality. I would like to invite anyone listening to pray about becoming part of that team. Together we can bring good news to those who suffer, gently calm those who live in fear, and declare freedom to those modern-day Hagars of contemporary Mormon fundamentalism. And you know, there's one more thing I'd like to say to anyone hearing this message who just might be one of those Hagars like I was. I want you to know that there is abundant life outside of polygamy. I found it, and we can help you find it too.
If you are trapped in polygamy today, there is a way out. There are people who are desperately wanting to help you, and go for it.
I haven't lost anything at all. I've gained. And if you just trust that, and there are people out there who would help you in the physical realm of meeting your physical needs and in spiritual ways to point you to Christ so that you can experience that joy and that peace and that comfort that's beyond understanding, that's only found in Jesus Christ, the Jesus Christ who died for you, who paid your sin debt, who's your creator, the lover of your soul. He loves you. And all you need to do is come to Him and flee the abomination of polygamy.
There's no middleman between me and you, Lord. You did it. You bought me and you paid for me, and by God, you've got me. And I will spend the rest of my days to do everything I can that the prison doors will be opened, the chains will be cut off, and that the people will walk free out of the darkness and into the light and into the love of God. That's what motivates me every morning, my gratitude.
For more information on the current status of the Hagar Home project, or to learn how you can be involved either through financial gifts or sharing your own talents and expertise, please visit our website at hagarhome.org or email us at contact@hagarhome.org. As an outreach of a Shield and Refuge ministry and Main Street Church, the Hagar Home is a tax-exempt ministry, and all donations are tax-deductible. Donations can be made online directly at the website, or you may send your gifts, comments, or questions to A Shield and Refuge Ministry, P.O. Box 651-292, Salt Lake City, Utah, 84165. If you or someone you know is in need of assistance in leaving a polygamous situation We can and will help you. Visit shieldandrefuge.org for more information, or call us toll-free at 1-877-425-9993, or write us at the address shown. Join us as we share in God's mission to bring freedom, healing, and hope to those in bondage to modern-day polygamy.